drop them in the chat, and our chat moderators will be more than happy to answer them. Okay, so before we start, if I can ask everyone to mute themselves so there's no background noise throughout the presentation, it'll be greatly appreciated. Like always, we have our land acknowledgement before any events. It states that I wish to acknowledge this land on which the University of Toronto operates. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Huron-Wendat, the Seneca, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit River. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many Indigenous people from across Turtle Island, and we're grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land. So a quick introduction to your host today. Your presentation is hosted by me, Anise, and Jenny. We're both second year at Rotman Commerce, specializing in finance and econ. We're also both RCSA events committee members. Okay, a quick rundown on what's going to happen in the next hour or so. The first 10 minutes, we'll be talking about how to build a resume. Next 10, we'll be talking about how to write a cover letter. And in the last hour, we're going to have a one-on-one breakout sessions where you will be paired with a reviewer to review your resume and cover letter. So to start off, we have our resume part. So what is a resume? It's essentially a marketing tool that showcases your experiences and transferable skills to employers. Recruiters are going to scan and not read your resume. So that means that your resume should be very clear and concise. You should also tailor your resume to each opportunity. This implies that you should definitely read the job descriptions and look for specific requirements and qualifications. Here's an example of a resume template. Your resume does not have to look exactly like this. It's just an example for you to visualize. Usually, a resume has 4 sections: education, work experience, extracurricular experience, and skills and interests. Now, I'll be talking a little bit more about each section specifically. First one will be education. You should write your majors and minors and your expected graduation date. You would put Bachelor of Commerce specialist in blank, and you would fill that in second year once you choose your specialist. In a normal application, you would put your GPA, but since first year students don't have GPA, you can just leave it for now. You should also put in your high school and any scholarships that you have. If they're not self-explanatory, you can also write a short descriptions about them. Make sure to use your U of T email. Don't put your home address. Add phone number and LinkedIn. If you don't already have one, I highly encourage you to add one, as it's a really important networking tool. Next up, we have work experience. So this might be one of the most important part of your resume. Try to write down your quantitative and qualitative outcomes and use accomplishment-based statements. So what does that mean? There are 3 steps to writing accomplishment statements. Step 1, you would use action verbs. For example, if you look at the example here, they use the words assist, perform, collaborate, launch, and conducted. And then second step, you would write down anything that you did, so projects that you have worked on. And lastly, you would write down your results. So what did you do, and what did your action plans lead to? So what does it mean by quantitative outcomes? If you look at the last bullet point on this example, it says conducted 200 tests and corrected 50 errors, increasing software development efficiency by 20%. These are all tangible results that you can show employer what you have specifically done, and it makes your description more convincing. Make sure to keep your resume really concise again, and don't assume readers know everything. And a really important tip for first-year students is to think about transferable skills, because a lot of you guys don't have really relevant work experience, but you can think about any transferable skills that you have developed in the past that can be related to the future positions that you're applying for. And lastly, make sure your experience are in reverse chronological order, which means from the most recent to the least recent. Next, we have extracurricular experience, which is similar to work experience. But instead, you would list clubs, volunteer experience, and etc. Also, again, start with action verbs and the same 3 steps: action verb, project, and then result. When recruiters look at your resume, they're seeing how you can have the same impact you did previously at this new role. So also do not go overboard with what you did. Keep it to around 2 to 3 point max. Again, try to keep it concise and simple. Lastly, we have skills and interests. So you can list down your technical skills that you've learned. Microsoft Office is a really important and good skills to be put on because it might be required for many of the roles that you'll be applying for in the future. And in upper years, once you choose your specialization, you can also talk about any technical skills that are more tailored towards your specialist, such as financing modeling. Languages is also a huge asset, especially when you want to work abroad. Also, make sure to state your proficiency so the recruiters have a better understanding of how well you can speak the language. You can also state any interest. It just shows that you have a personality outside of work and school, but make sure that these are topics of discussion with the recruiter. So make sure you're very honest with it, because sometimes they will read it and chat with you about these topics. And if you have nothing to say about it, then they would think that you're dishonest with your resume. You can also include any awards you have here. And again, use spacing, either 1 line or 2, don't use half. Here's an example of a before and after resume. The left side is not horrible, but it's a little bit harder to read and it's not as neat. So on the right side, you can see that there's a lot of formatting done, and you can also be sure to work around margins and spacing. It's also a good idea to color code or bold any headings so it's easier to separate and read. Lastly, there are a few resume tips that we'll like to give. So no pictures and headshots for your resume, and definitely no typos, because it shows lack of detail and laziness, which recruiters generally really value. Don't highlight anything you cannot speak to. So again, be honest with your resume. Try to keep it to 1 page, but 1.5 pages max. Also, you don't have to include an objective, because recruiters know that you're trying to get the job. More importantly, tailor your resume to the job. So again, read the job descriptions carefully and add keywords. Have a good balance of text and white space. Again, that has to do with margining and spacing. And lastly, use same contact header for both resume and cover letter, just so they're more coherent. So now I'm going to pass it on to Jenny, who will be talking about how to write a cover letter properly.
Thanks, Denise. So while a resume can exhibit a detailed timeline of a candidate's hard skills and professional experience, the cover letter essentially achieves the same objective with the addition of one's soft skills. It's a letter directly to one's hiring manager, and it should be engaging, as you can expect them to be reading a considerable number during recruitment season. But don't fret, cover letters are not a significant portion of your application as a whole. So you really only need to make sure to be clear, concise, and coherent. This includes details like grammar, spelling, and formatting to be spot on to present yourself in the most efficient and effective manner. The next slide, please. The rundown goes as follows. The cover letter should be organized into 4 rough paragraphs that include first, the introduction, second, a debriefing of your previous experience, third, an elaboration of relevant skills and traits, and fourth, a note that anticipates a follow-up from the manager. Let's get into the details. So before you begin writing the letter itself, make sure to include a header that states your name and contact information, such as your email and phone number. Then include the corporation or association you're addressing with their correct information, and begin the letter as you normally would with a strong "Dear." And many of those who apply to positions of hiring address the letter to a hiring manager if they're not 100% certain who exactly will be reviewing your application, which makes this the safest option in most cases. However, if you are without a doubt certain on who to address, go ahead and include the name as well. The purpose of the introduction would be to delineate who you are, what you do, and why you're writing this letter. So express your interest in the specific role and your personal reasons for this said interest. It's always good to include a friendly name that the manager would know to show you've already devoted time to seek out an insider with your enthusiasm. And as your resume contains a rough outline of your professional experience and past roles, take this time in your cover letter to make honorary mentions that you may not have gotten the chance to include in your limited resume. But be careful to keep this section concise and to the point, as discussing roles can easily become repetitive, and instead concentrate more on specific tasks and projects you've accomplished in such roles and skills can be transferable to this new position. And in the example shown here, you can observe the statement in red that presents the applicant's previous role. And soon thereafter, you see the statement in blue that describes the applicant's acquired skills from this aforementioned position. Then the applicant closes the paragraph off by mentioning how this is relevant and applicable to this new position of application. And similar to your second section, you would typically introduce a different but all the more relevant trait, skill, or experience in a role when writing your third paragraph. And as seen here, this applicant brings up in schoolwork like organizing the RCSA first year case competition to show the applicant's proficiency in communication and time management while also indicating the specific tasks the applicant took on. It's important to mention that if you ever feel that your second paragraph does not need more elaboration, it's up to you to proceed to your ending. And if you feel that 2 paragraphs are not enough to speak into who you are, you can also feel free to highlight your qualifications in 3 paragraphs. And as with everything, cover letters are really up to you as they're supposed to encapsulate your overall competency and literacy. The final remark should once again express your enthusiasm and eagerness to join if hired, and this should be brief and completed in 2 to 3 sentences. Don't forget to sign off with a sincerely and your full name. With formatting, the golden rule is with cover letters, the golden rule is formatting. When writing a full-on letter, many think it has to be comprehensive and that it should resemble an entire essay, but that is highly discouraged. Sufficient information is more than necessary. However, it's only a letter to express your interest in a role and briefly highlight your aptitude. We remind you that spacing and organization are very, very important, but if you think your letter runs a little too specific, you can always play with the margins to resolve this. And last pointers to leave you all with: double and triple check to make sure that you're addressing the correct student group and manager, whomever that may be. And also keep your resume and cover letter consistent, whether that be keeping the layout of your header and contact info or a general format like font. And when writing the letter itself, avoid colors and bolding as they may come off as haphazard. So we typically advise you to stick to Times New Roman in a minimum of size 10. And with the general rule of keeping the cover letter to a single page, the page should still have white space to contrast the dark text as seen from previous examples. And last but not least, cover letters are typically less significant than your resume when reviewing your application as a complete package. And so definitely prioritize your resume when preparing. And that would be all from RCSA on our tips and tricks with cover letters. We wanted to remind all the first years here that RCSA has our intern applications posted on the RC portal, and our job ID is 1779. Apply by the end of September 30th. And as an RCSA intern last year myself, being a part of RCSA has been an incredibly valuable journey, as we've had the privilege to represent and speak on behalf of our RC community. And being a part of RCSA, you really get a better sense of all of the other RC student groups because we work with every single one throughout the year, which isn't a common opportunity. And RCSA is one of the more competitive groups. However, I like to think that the application process itself is just another learning opportunity for everyone. And so I highly recommend for all of you to check it out. And RCSA also has the annual president panel coming up on the 28th of September, and our registration opens tomorrow. This is an opportunity for RC first years to meet the student leaders and various presidents in all of our RC groups and hear their personal experiences in playing a role in diversifying activities in Rotman Commerce. And this is a great chance for all of you to get yourself out there and meet upper years who may help you when applying. And for more information on what RCSA is and what we do, you can for sure check us out on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and our website. Feel free to screenshot these as well. And moving on to the highlight of today's workshop, we now invite you to join Breakout Rooms with our 15 amazing career peers and upper years who will be joining us to give one-to-one feedback with the resume or cover letter you've prepared for today. They all have exceptional experience with the application process as they've all secured intern positions this past summer and have begun stellar careers already. They're also super friendly and here to help you out. And according to the timetable we've listed here, this is the updated and only correct version and is different from the one emailed to participants ahead of time. Join the breakout room with the appropriate number at your designated time. We will be reminding you throughout the Zoom chat, but keep an eye out for when it's your turn. We urge you not to leave the Zoom call as timing may adjust depending on the schedule, but feel free to step out and get a water or bathroom break if needed. And if your time slot is significantly later. And that is all from RCSA. We wish you guys all good luck for the rest of the meeting today.